She was only 11, but she took on the courtroom to save her dad. When everyone gave up on her father, Lyra Benson stepped into a courtroom full of adults with nothing but a folder and the truth. What followed shocked the entire city. Welcome to African Tale by Hope, where African stories come alive. Subscribe and join the family of storytellers. Everyone in the courtroom froze as a small girl stepped forward. She looked about 11 years old, with long brown hair falling past her shoulders. Her shoes made soft tapping sounds on the wooden floor as she walked toward the front. The red dress she wore hung loose on her thin frame, clearly too big. In her trembling hands, she clutched an old folder tightly against her chest. Behind the judge's bench sat Judge Merrick, a serious man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He wore a black robe and watched the girl with a puzzled look. "Young lady," he said, raising one eyebrow. "What are you doing? Sit down. This is a serious court." The girl stopped walking. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly. "Your Honor, my name is Lyra Benson. That man over there is my father, Theo Benson." She pointed to a tired-looking man in a worn gray suit sitting at the defendant's table. "And I will defend him myself," she added, "because no one else will tell the truth." The courtroom erupted with gasps. People whispered and stood up to get a better view. Some even dropped their notebooks. "Order!" Judge Merrick banged his gavel sharply. "Order in the court." The sound echoed, silencing the crowd. The prosecutor, Mr. Falk, stood quickly. His suit was crisp, his hair neatly parted. He chuckled as he looked at the judge. "Your Honor, this is absurd," Mr. Falk said. "The child should be removed from the courtroom immediately." "I have proof," Lyra shouted, lifting her worn folder into the air. "Proof my dad is innocent. And proof of who really stole the money." The courtroom fell silent again. Even Mr. Falk stopped smiling. Judge Merrick leaned forward, his sharp eyes fixed on Lyra. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he took off his glasses and rubbed his temples slowly. The silence in the courtroom was heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. "Child," the judge said at last, "do you understand what you're saying? Your father, Theo Benson, is accused of stealing $50,000. He is facing serious prison time. Experienced lawyers have looked at the case. The evidence against him is strong." Lyra took a shaky breath and stood straighter. "That evidence is fake," she said, her voice steadier now. "And I can prove it." A gasp rippled through the courtroom again. This time, no one tried to stop it. Judge Merrick stared at Lyra's face. There was something in her eyes, a fire, a quiet strength, something unshakable. He glanced toward Mr. Colby, Theo's court-appointed lawyer, who looked just as shocked as everyone else. The judge spoke again. "I've been on this bench for 32 years, he said slowly. "And I've never done this before. But I'm going to allow you to speak." Lyra blinked. She looked unsure for just a moment. "You will speak through Mr. Colby," Judge Merrick added, pointing toward the lawyer. "He'll help you present your evidence correctly." Mr. Falk jumped up from the prosecution table, his face red with anger. "Your Honor, I must object. This is entirely against procedure. She's a child." "Objection noted," the judge said calmly. "Now sit down. This is my courtroom." Lyra felt her chest loosen, the weight of fear lifting just a little. She turned back toward her father. Theo looked up at her, tears running down his face. And then, for the first time in months, he smiled. She smiled back. Theo mouthed the words, "I love you," from across the courtroom. Lyra felt her eyes sting with tears, but she didn't look away. She nodded slowly and whispered back, "I love you too, Dad." Judge Merrick tapped his pen on the edge of his desk. "All right, Miss Benson. You may begin. Tell us what you've brought and why you believe your father is innocent." Lyra stepped forward, clutching the folder tighter. She placed it gently on the table next to Mr. Colby, who still looked like he had no idea what was happening. "Your Honor," Lyra began, opening the folder carefully, "I need to tell you about my father, about who he really is, what really happened, and about the person who destroyed our lives." The courtroom was completely silent now. People leaned forward in their seats. Even the guards at the back of the room were still. Lyra glanced around nervously. Her hands trembled, but her voice remained steady. "My dad, Theo Benson, didn't steal anything. He's honest. He's good. He's the best person I know. But someone tricked him, and now he's the one paying the price." She looked directly at Judge Merrick. "And I have proof. Real proof." The judge nodded slowly. "Then let's start from the beginning. Tell us your story." Lyra took a deep breath and turned a page in her folder. "My dad and I live in a small apartment on the quiet side of the city. It's not fancy, but it's our home. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a little kitchen, and a couch with a tear in it we never fixed. But we were happy there. As she spoke, the courtroom leaned in closer, like they were stepping into her world. Lyra continued, her voice calm now as if she were telling a story to a friend. My dad's name is Theo Benson. He's been an accountant for years. Every morning, he wakes up early and makes me breakfast. Then he walks me to school before heading to work downtown. He's the kind of dad who remembers my favorite juice and always keeps snacks in his coat pocket in case I get hungry. She looked toward Theo, who was wiping his eyes with the sleeve of his suit. After my mom passed away in a car accident when I was 5, Lyra went on. It's just been me and my dad. He never complained. He never gave up. He told me we might not have much, but we had each other. And that was enough. Judge Merrick nodded slowly, listening carefully. We couldn't afford much. Most of my clothes came from my cousin Arla. They were always a little too big, but Dad said they gave me room to grow. On Saturdays, we'd go to the library and check out books. On Sundays, we'd walk to the pond and feed the ducks. She smiled at the memory, though her hands were still tight around the edge of the table. Dad always said, money comes and goes, Lyra, but love and honesty stay forever. And I believed him. I still do. There was a pause as she flipped to the next page in her folder. 7 months ago, she said, her voice turning somber. Everything changed. My dad came home from work one evening, more excited than I'd seen him in years. He said a man named Mr. Harrow, his boss's business partner, wanted to start a new company with him. A real partnership. The courtroom listened, completely quiet. Lyra glanced down at her notes before continuing. That night, Dad came home grinning from ear to ear. He picked me up and spun me around like he used to when I was little. Guess what, Lyra, he said. I got an offer, a real offer. She smiled slightly at the memory, even though her voice trembled. He told me Mr. Harrow had seen his hard work. Said he was impressed by how careful and honest Dad was with numbers. Mr. Harrow said he wanted to start a financial business, and he wanted my dad to be his partner. Lyra looked up at the judge. An equal partner. 50-50. Mr. Harrow would bring the money, and Dad would run the books and manage the money. Dad said it was a dream come true. He said, we could finally breathe, Lyra. We could move out of this old apartment, maybe even save for college. She paused, swallowed hard. For the next 2 months, Dad worked harder than ever. He stayed up late, going through papers, making plans, drawing charts. He told me he couldn't afford to make even a single mistake. He said, when someone trusts you with their money, you treat it like it's sacred. Lyra turned the page in her folder and held up a sheet. This is one of the budgets he made. He showed me how he tracks every dollar. Every penny. That's how careful he is. Mr. Colby, the defense lawyer, reached over and held the sheet up for the judge to see. Judge Merrick raised an eyebrow. Is this the same kind of record that was submitted as part of the evidence against your father? Lyra nodded. Yes, Your Honor. But there's more. And it changes everything. Lyra took another breath and continued, her fingers resting gently on the next paper in her folder. Everything was going fine. Dad was tired, but he was happy. He believed in Mr. Harrow. He thought they were building something real together. Every night, while I did homework, he'd sit next to me at the kitchen table, going through contracts and spreadsheets. She looked over at Theo again, who was watching her like she was the sun itself. Sometimes I'd tell him to take a break. He'd smile and say, just one more page, Lyra. I want to make sure every detail is right. That's the kind of man he is. He doesn't cut corners. He doesn't take what isn't his. Judge Merrick leaned back in his chair, hands folded in front of him. And then, he asked gently. Lyra nodded. Then came that Monday morning. I'll never forget it. He went to work like usual. But that afternoon, 2 police officers walked into his office. They told him he was under arrest for theft and fraud. Gasps echoed again across the room. Some people shook their heads. Others leaned forward to hear more. Lyra's voice dropped slightly. He was confused. Shocked. He kept telling them there was a mistake. That they could check the records. That he'd never taken a cent. She opened to the next page in her folder and showed a printed bank statement. But the police had this. It shows $50,000 withdrawn from the business account. And it has my dad's signature on the form. But the thing is, she held up another paper. That signature isn't his. Judge Merrick narrowed his eyes. Are you saying the signature was forged? Yes, Your Honor, Lyra said, steady now. And I can prove it. Lyra placed the withdrawal form carefully on the evidence table. Then, with slow hands, she pulled out 3 other sheets. These are birthday cards my dad signed for me. This one's from last year, and these 2 are from the year before. He always signs them the same way. I brought them to show you how he really writes his name. Mr. Colby took the papers and handed them to the court officer, who brought them to Judge Merrick. The judge adjusted his glasses and studied the documents carefully. The T in Theo is always long and slanted, Lyra explained. And the B in Benson? He loops it like a music note. But on the bank form, she pointed to the signature on the withdrawal. The T is too short and the B is barely even there. It's close, but it's wrong. Mr. Fox stood quickly, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, we can't seriously consider this child's comparison of birthday cards and legal forms as expert handwriting analysis. This is highly irregular. Judge Merrick didn't look away from the signatures. We will decide if it has merit. Continue, Miss Benson. Lyra nodded and turned another page. It's not just the signature. The money was withdrawn from the bank on March 17th at 2:30 p.m. But at that exact time, my dad was with me. She reached into her folder and pulled out a planner. That was the day of my parent-teacher conference. It was scheduled from 2 to 3 p.m. My dad was sitting right next to me and my teacher. I wrote it here in my school planner that day. She looked up, her voice clear and steady. He couldn't have been at the bank. He was with me. Judge Merrick leaned forward. Do you have anything else that confirms your father's location at that time, Miss Benson? Lyra nodded quickly. Yes, Your Honor. After the conference, Dad took me to the coffee shop next to my school. It's something we always do when I get good grades. She pulled out another paper, this one neatly highlighted. This is his credit card statement. It shows a transaction at Corner Mug Cafe, March 17th, 2:47 p.m. Mr. Colby leaned over, reviewing the paper with fresh eyes. That's just 17 minutes after the supposed bank withdrawal, he said out loud, clearly impressed. And that cafe is across town from the bank. Mr. Fox stood again. Your Honor, credit card receipts don't prove who made the purchase. The father could have handed his card to anyone. Lyra turned sharply toward the prosecutor. No, sir. I was with him. I watched him pay for my hot chocolate. He had whipped cream on his nose, and I laughed so hard I almost spilled mine. Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. It wasn't someone else. It was him. People in the gallery chuckled softly at the image. Even Judge Merrick's stern face softened a bit. And I remember that day, Lyra added. It was important. My teacher, Miss Elric, told my dad I should move into advanced math. She said I was a problem solver. She glanced down at her folder. So I decided to solve this problem too. The judge nodded slowly. You're presenting a very clear timeline. What happened after the arrest? Lyra's expression darkened. After that, they took my dad away. And no one believed him. Not the police. Not the lawyer. Not even some of my friends. She closed her folder slowly. That's when I knew I had to do something. Lyra looked around the courtroom, her fingers gripping the edge of the folder again. After my dad was arrested, they sent me to live with my aunt. Aunt Nessa tried her best to make me comfortable, but everything felt wrong. The house was loud, crowded, and I missed my dad every second. She glanced toward Theo, who had his head bowed, his shoulders shaking slightly. One night, I heard Aunt Nessa talking on the phone, Lyra said, her voice growing quieter. She told someone that Dad's lawyer wasn't helping, that he kept saying the evidence was too strong and maybe Dad should just plead guilty. A hush fell over the courtroom again. Even Mr. Colby looked down at the table, ashamed. I couldn't sleep that night, Lyra continued. I kept thinking about what Dad always told me. Don't just cry about a problem, think about it. Use your brain. There's always a clue. So I decided to go looking for clues. She turned back to Judge Merrick. A week later, Aunt Nessa took me back to our apartment so I could pack some things. While she was in the living room, I went into Dad's room. His desk was still there, and so were his folders. I started going through them. Judge Merrick raised a brow. What exactly did you find? I found copies of everything, Lyra said. Contracts, receipts, budgets, and bank statements. I found the withdrawal form with the strange signature. But I also found something else. Something really important. She pulled out a printed email and held it up. This is an email from Mr. Harrow to my dad, dated 3 weeks before the money went missing. And it proves Mr. Harrow wanted to shut down the business himself. The crowd began murmuring again. Lyra stepped closer to the table and laid the email gently in front of Judge Merrick. It says, and I quote, she began, reading carefully, Theo, this partnership isn't working out the way I hoped. I'll need my investment back soon. Let's talk about closing things down properly. She looked up. That was 3 weeks before the money went missing. The judge's expression shifted. He leaned back in his chair and laced his fingers together. So you're saying Mr. Harrow wanted to pull his money out before he ever accused your father of stealing it? Yes, Your Honor, Lyra said firmly. And then, 3 weeks later, the money disappears, and Mr. Harrow suddenly acts like it was stolen. But what if he just took it himself? Mr. Fox stood again, this time more cautious. This email doesn't prove anything, Your Honor. Business partners often discuss closing agreements or returning funds. It's not unusual. But it's the timing, Lyra insisted. And he didn't just want the money back. He wanted to hurt my dad. He blamed him, forged his signature, and made everyone think he was a criminal. She held up another paper. This is a copy of the bank's withdrawal log. It says the $50,000 was taken out at 2:30 p.m. on March 17th. And my school is across town. My dad couldn't be in 2 places at once. That's not just emotion. That's math. There were a few chuckles from the crowd, and even Judge Merrick allowed a slight grin. Your Honor, Mr. Colby finally spoke, sounding more confident than ever. The defense respectfully requests all of these documents be submitted as evidence. The timeline, the credit receipt, the email, all of it. Judge Merrick nodded. Approved. They will be entered into the record. Lyra took a deep breath. She was just getting started. Lyra turned the page in her folder, her hands no longer shaking. She felt stronger now, like every word she said helped lift the weight off her chest. There's one more thing, Your Honor. Something important. Judge Merrick nodded. Go on. When I found the email and the withdrawal document, I still felt like people wouldn't believe me. So I kept looking. She reached into her bag and pulled out a second folder. My dad keeps everything. Receipts, statements, he's super organized. I remembered something he said when I visited him at the jail. Her voice softened. He said we went to the coffee shop after the conference and that he used his credit card. That gave me an idea. I checked his credit card records. And I found this. She held up another page. This is his credit card statement. It shows a transaction at Corner Mug Cafe on March 17th at 2:47 p.m. That's 17 minutes after the money was taken out of the bank, across the city. Mr. Colby stepped forward and handed it to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. The time and location match my story. I was there. I was with him. And the cafe is nowhere near the bank. Lyra looked across the courtroom, locking eyes with Mr. Falk. So either my dad learned how to teleport, or he's innocent. A ripple of laughter moved through the courtroom. Mr. Falk's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Judge Merrick tapped his pen thoughtfully against the desk. Miss Benson, is your teacher able to confirm this parent-teacher meeting? She remembers, Your Honor, Lyra said. But the school wouldn't let her testify. They said they don't want to be involved in court matters. The judge sighed. How convenient. Lyra looked him in the eye. But I remember. And I was there. Isn't that enough? Judge Merrick leaned back in his chair and studied Lyra for a long moment. The entire courtroom was silent, waiting to see what he would say next. Then he finally spoke. Miss Benson, the court acknowledges your presence at the scene as a direct eyewitness. Your testimony will be considered as part of this case. Lyra nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Colby stood beside her, flipping through the folder she had so carefully prepared. His voice, now steady and sure, addressed the court. With the court's permission, the defense requests that Miss Benson remain on the stand as a witness and continue presenting the timeline and evidence she's gathered. It is clear she has conducted an extensive, independent investigation that challenges the prosecution's entire foundation. Mr. Fox stood again, trying to hold his composure. Your Honor, this is a courtroom, not a school debate. We cannot let an 11-year-old rewrite the legal process. She's not trained. She's not qualified. She's observant, Judge Merrick interrupted. She's calm under pressure. And she has done what many adults failed to do. Ask the right questions. The courtroom murmured in agreement. Lyra returned to the witness stand and sat up tall. There's more, she said, her voice steady again. When the police arrested my dad, they didn't take all of his records. They missed a folder that had emails, receipts, and client documents. That's where I found everything. She turned the page. Your Honor, I even found inconsistencies in how the business account was accessed. I'm not sure what all the banking terms mean, but the access pattern changed the week before the money disappeared. I think someone else logged in remotely. Judge Merrick raised an eyebrow. Did you bring those records? Yes, Lyra said, holding them up. Right here. Lyra handed the printed banking logs to the bailiff, who brought them to Judge Merrick. The judge took his time reading the highlighted sections. Everyone in the courtroom watched him closely. Even Mr. Fox stopped fidgeting and stood still. After a long moment, Judge Merrick looked up. You highlighted 2 access points here, Miss Benson. One on March 10th and one on March 17th, the day of the withdrawal. What exactly are you pointing out? Lyra straightened her back and explained. The March 10th login matches my dad's usual time. He always worked from home between 6 and 8 in the evening after dinner. But the one on the 17th? It was done at noon. That's not his schedule. And he was at his regular office that morning. He never logged in from home at lunchtime, Mr. Colby added. And on the day the money went missing, he never accessed the account at all after that login? No, sir, Lyra confirmed. But Mr. Harrow had the password too. Dad trusted him with it. The judge turned sharply to Mr. Falk. Was any of this investigated by the prosecution? Were access times reviewed? Mr. Falk looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, our case relied primarily on the signed withdrawal document and Mr. Harrow's testimony. You assumed the signature was valid and that no one would question it, the judge finished coldly. Mr. Colby glanced toward Lyra with a small nod. Miss Benson has brought forward reasonable doubt, and at this point, much more than that. Lyra looked directly at the judge again. There's one person who can answer these questions, Your Honor. One person who was there when the account was created. One person who had access to the money, and a reason to take it. Who? Judge Merrick asked. Lyra's voice didn't waver. Mr. Harrow. The name rang out across the courtroom like a dropped glass. Mr. Harrow. Lyra didn't blink. She stared straight ahead, her chin lifted just a little, like she wasn't afraid of anyone anymore. Judge Merrick sat upright. Is Mr. Harrow present in the courtroom? Heads turned. At the back of the room, a man in an expensive navy blue suit slowly rose. His face was pale. His eyes met Lyra's for the briefest moment before shifting quickly away. That's him, Lyra said clearly. Judge Merrick nodded to the bailiff. Bring Mr. Harrow to the witness stand. Now. Mr. Harrow walked stiffly to the front of the room, his shoes silent against the floor. He sat down, folded his hands, and avoided looking at Theo or Lyra. You will be sworn in, the judge said. The bailiff stepped forward. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, Mr. Harrow said, but his voice was tight. Forced. Mr. Colby approached slowly. Mr. Harrow, did you instruct Mr. Benson to manage the business accounts? Yes, Harrow said. Did you have access to those accounts yourself? Yes. Did you send Mr. Benson an email on February 24th asking to dissolve the business? Harrow nodded once. Then why, 3 weeks later, did you accuse him of stealing the same money you wanted back? Mr. Harrow didn't answer. Mr. Colby turned. Your Honor, I believe Mr. Harrow orchestrated the theft, forged the withdrawal form, and framed Mr. Benson. The courtroom was holding its breath. Then the judge looked at Mr. Harrow. Well, Mr. Harrow shifted in the chair. His polished mask began to crack. I panicked, he muttered. I had debts. I thought if I blamed Theo, I'd walk away clean. I didn't think anyone would believe a kid. Whispers broke out. Lyra gripped the edge of her seat, her heart pounding. You forged the signature? The judge asked. Yes, Harrow admitted, eyes on the floor. I forged it. I took the money. I told the police Theo did it. The courtroom erupted. People gasped. Reporters scrambled to take notes. Someone in the back shouted. She was right. Theo dropped his head into his hands, shoulders shaking with relief. Lyra felt tears on her cheeks, but this time they were happy ones. Judge Merrick banged his gavel 3 times. Order. Sit down. When the noise faded, the judge looked directly at Mr. Falk. Do you still wish to pursue charges against Mr. Benson? Mr. Falk stood slowly, ashamed. No, Your Honor. The prosecution moves to dismiss all charges immediately. Judge Merrick turned to Theo. Mr. Benson, you are free to go. This court deeply regrets the pain you and your daughter have endured. The courtroom erupted in applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering. Lyra jumped from her seat and ran toward her father. Dad, she cried. Lyra. Theo's voice cracked as he opened his arms wide. She flew into his embrace, hugging him tighter than ever before. You saved me, he whispered, pressing his forehead against hers. You saved me, Lyra. She was crying and laughing at the same time. I told you I'd find a way. They stayed like that, father and daughter, while the courtroom stood still, many wiping their own eyes. Judge Merrick stepped down from the bench and approached them. Miss Benson, he said gently. Lyra turned, still holding her dad's hand. Yes, Your Honor? I've seen hundreds of cases, dozens of lawyers, but I've never seen anyone do what you did. You weren't just brave, you were right. You were careful. You were relentless. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You reminded us all what justice really means. Lyra smiled through her tears. I just wanted the truth. The judge looked at Theo. You've raised a remarkable daughter. Theo nodded. She raised me, I think. More laughter echoed through the courtroom. Even Mr. Falk, red-faced and humbled, gave a respectful nod toward Lyra. That evening, back at their apartment, Theo and Lyra stepped inside together for the first time in months. Dust lingered in the air. Everything looked just as they'd left it, except now, it felt different. Brighter. Free. We're home, Theo whispered. They spent the evening cleaning, laughing, and eating Lyra's favorite dinner. Spaghetti with too much cheese. Theo even let her drink soda, a rare treat. After dinner, Theo sat beside her on the couch, looking at the worn bookshelf. You know, he said, I used to think I had to protect you from the world. Lyra looked up. You still do, Dad. He smiled. Maybe. But you protected me too. Before bed, Lyra stopped at the photo of her mother on the shelf. I think she would have been proud, she said softly. I know she would, Theo said. That night, Theo tucked her in for the first time in a long time. Do we get to pray together again? Lyra asked. Theo nodded. Of course. We never stopped, we just paused. Hand in hand, they whispered thanks for truth, strength, and each other. Over the next few weeks, life returned to normal, or better than normal. Theo got his job back. His boss apologized publicly, even gave him a raise. I should have believed you, he said. But your daughter? She showed the whole city who you really are. Lyra returned to school a hero. Kids who once whispered now waved. Teachers stopped her in the hallway to shake her hand. Even the principal gave her a certificate for outstanding courage and justice. But Lyra didn't let it go to her head. She still did her homework. Still read at the library every Saturday. Still helped Aunt Nessa cook on weekends. But there was one difference. Now, she knew exactly what she wanted to be. One sunny afternoon, Judge Merrick visited their apartment. This time not as a judge, just as a friend. He brought Lyra a book titled Great Trials That Changed the World. This belonged to me when I was a young law student, he told her. Now I'm giving it to you. Because I think you're going to change the world, too. Lyra took the book carefully, as if it were treasure. Thank you. I'll read every page. Theo stood proudly behind her. She always does. Judge Merrick smiled. If she ever wants to shadow me at court, the invitation is open. As the judge left, Lyra sat on the couch, flipping through the book. On the first page was a handwritten note. To Lyra, keep believing in truth, even when others don't. The world needs voices like yours. Judge Merrick. Lyra smiled and closed the book. Her decision was made. That night, Lyra sat with Theo on the balcony, watching the sun set behind the city skyline. She rested her head on his shoulder. Dad. Yes, sweetheart. I think I want to be a lawyer. Or maybe even a judge. Theo smiled and wrapped his arm around her. I think you'd be amazing at either. I want to help people like you, she said. People who get blamed for things they didn't do. People who need someone to believe in them. You already are that person, Theo whispered. Whatever you become, you already are. Lyra looked up at the sky, full of stars. For the first time in a long time, she felt calm. Not because everything was perfect, but because she had done what she set out to do. She had fought for her dad. And she had won. Please like and share. Don't forget to hit on the subscribe button.